Lagos doesn't wait for anyone. Even before sunrise, the streets thrum with life. Horns, hawkers, bus conductors shouting destinations, chaos that somehow feels normal. For Sarah, Saturdays were sacred. Market day meant fresh meat for Sunday stew, pepper soup and suya. It was her small ritual, the comfort of routine. That morning, she walked briskly to Oyingbo Market, her shopping bag swinging at her side, expecting the usual. Familiar shouts, laughs, and the smell of grilled meat. But her regular butcher stall, where Michael always stood with a grin, was gone. In his place, a new man had set up. Tall, neat, with a spotless apron and a table arranged like a display in a hotel lobby. The meat was perfect, red, cut cleanly, no flies, no blood stains, no odor. "Good morning, madam," he said with a calm smile. "Fresh beef today, soft, clean, only the best." Sarah hesitated. Something about him didn't feel right. But she needed meat. She bought half a kilo. The bag had a small logo, Prime Vale Meats Ltd. At home, she unpacked it. It didn't smell like fresh meat, not rotten, not bad, just sterile, clean in a way that made her stomach twist. Still, she cooked it. Pepper, onions, spices, the usual. The stew looked normal, tasted normal, but her gut told her it wasn't. The next Saturday, Sarah returned to the market. The man was there again. Before she spoke, he said, "Welcome back, Sarah." Her heart skipped a beat. She hadn't told him her name. "How do you know me?" He said, "Everyone in this market knows you," with a calm, practiced smile. Something about the way he said it sent a shiver down her spine. Curiosity gnawed at her. That evening, she searched for Prime Vale Meats Nigeria online. One old article appeared. Prime Vale Meats under investigation, unhygienic practices and unverified slaughter sources discovered in Lagos markets. Sarah's stomach sank. The article mentioned rumors locals whispered. Some meat came from places that no one dared to ask about, from farms or slaughter points that were hidden, unregistered. There were stories of markets where the meat remembered the hands that touched it, not literally, but in the way things looked, smelled, and reacted. Folklore warning against greed and carelessness. The next day, Sarah returned to the market to confront the man. The stall was gone. All that remained was a small note pinned to the wooden board where his table had been. "Supply closed. Do not ask questions." The words felt like a warning. Even now, when Sarah opened her freezer, she couldn't shake the feeling that the meat smelled different, as if it had a story it refused to tell. And the whispers in the market, tales of the hands the blood remembered, seemed less like superstition and more like cautionary truth. Sarah couldn't stop thinking about the Prime Vale meat. Something about it unsettled her. Not just the article she'd read, but the way the butcher had looked at her, calm and knowing. She decided to investigate. Early Monday, she left her apartment before dawn. The market was quieter than usual, but still alive, with the occasional keke rider and hawker preparing for the day. At the market, she noticed a white van parked behind the stalls. No logos except a faded sticker, Prime Vale Logistics. The driver, a stocky man with a dark cap, moved quickly, carefully avoiding the crowd. Sarah stayed hidden behind crates and boxes. She followed the van on her bicycle, keeping a safe distance. The van turned off the main road, taking narrow, deserted paths towards the Ijora riverside, the same area mentioned in the article she had read. Broken factories and abandoned warehouses lined the roads. The smell of wet oil, rust, and damp earth filled the air. The van stopped at a warehouse with a rusted gate. The driver and another man unloaded crates silently. Sarah crouched behind the wall, her heart racing. She could hear hushed whispers. Everything is ready. No one must see. The supply must continue.
The crates were heavy, marked with prime veal meats. But something about the way the men handled them was odd, deliberate, almost ceremonial. One of the men paused and looked around. Sarah froze, heart hammering, pressing herself against the wall. Then the men vanished into the warehouse. Curiosity overcame fear. She crept closer, peeking through a small gap in the gate. Inside were rows of crates and containers. The workers moved efficiently, almost silently, placing meat into cold storage units. Occasionally, one whispered a prayer or muttered words she couldn't understand, an old saying she had once heard in her grandmother's stories about respecting the blood of the animal. A chill ran down her spine. As Sarah turned to leave, she noticed something small and dark at the corner of the warehouse. Something that didn't belong. A box with a faint red smear. She touched it briefly. A memory surged through her. A story her grandmother once told about blood that remembers the hand that touches it. Shaken, she retreated, pedaling back toward the city. Back in her apartment, she unpacked the meat she had bought the previous week. Even the small touch of that red-stained box left her uneasy. She realized something terrible. The prime veal supply wasn't just shady. It was controlled by people who understood old beliefs, urban myths, and fear, and they were using it to keep the market, and maybe the city, under control. The meat, the delivery, the whispers, it all seemed part of something bigger, something hidden in plain sight. Sarah knew one thing for certain. She had to go back. Sarah barely slept that night. The image of the red-stained box haunted her. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the warehouse again. The quiet men, the flickering lights, the whispers. By morning, she had made up her mind. She would go back. This time, not just to watch, but to see. At dusk, she packed her small torch, phone, and a power bank. She told no one where she was going. Lagos was too noisy during the day, but at night, near Ijora, the city changed. The hum faded into silence, the kind that could make your heartbeat sound like footsteps. When she reached the warehouse, it was dimly lit, the rusted gate slightly open, as if inviting her in. She slipped in quietly. The smell hit first, metallic and raw, like rust and blood mixed with cold air. Inside, the walls were lined with freezers. Some still worked, humming softly. Others stood dead and silent, doors half open, shadows pooling inside them. A faint sound came from the far corner. Two men talking in low tones. She hid behind a stack of crates, straining to listen. The supply came in late again. You know the rules. The offerings must be made before the new moon. Offerings. Her heart stopped. She knew that word from her grandmother's stories. The old traders of the river always made offerings for safe harvests. But this wasn't about harvests. This was meat. She peered around the crates. One man was cutting the meat on a steel table, arranging pieces neatly into trays. The other drew symbols, old, almost tribal, on the boxes with red chalk. The air grew heavier, colder. Suddenly, a drop of water hit her shoulder. She looked up. The ceiling was wet. Pipes dripped, but the water wasn't clear. It was tinted red. She stumbled back slightly, the noise echoing faintly. The men stopped. "Who's there?" one shouted. Sarah held her breath, hiding behind the crates. Footsteps approached, slow, deliberate. She crouched lower, heart racing. A hand brushed past her shoulder, but didn't stop. The man turned, muttering, "Maybe just a rat." She waited a full minute after they left before exhaling.
Sarah hadn't stepped foot near the market for a week, but the image of that meat in her freezer refused to leave her mind. She had thrown it out twice, yet somehow every morning she would find it sitting there again. Same wrap, same logo. At first, she thought she was imagining things, but one night she placed her phone on record beside the freezer before she slept. In the morning, she checked the footage. At 2:47 a.m., the video caught a faint hum, like low chanting, followed by the click of the freezer door, then silence. She watched the clip over and over, her breath catching each time. That was the moment she knew she couldn't run anymore. She had to go back to the source. By midnight, she was on her way to the Ajora riverside again. The moon hung low, the sky tinted orange from distant streetlights. The road was almost empty except for stray dogs and the soft hiss of the tide. When she reached the warehouse, it looked deserted. But the gate wasn't locked this time. It hung open, swaying slightly in the wind. She stepped in, flashlight trembling in her hand. The freezers were gone. In their place were wooden crates stacked high, each dripping faintly onto the wet concrete. The smell was stronger than before, thick, heavy, metallic. And beneath it all, the sound, a steady, rhythmic splash. She followed it through a narrow hallway that opened toward the river. The river itself looked wrong. It shimmered under the moonlight, but the water's surface pulsed ever so slightly, like it was breathing. Dozens of men stood by the bank, wearing dark aprons, washing crates in the water. They worked in silence, each movement perfectly in sync. None spoke, but every few minutes one of them would lift a bowl, scoop from the river, and pour it over a crate, whispering words too faint to catch. Then she saw them lower something large into the water. At first she thought it was animal carcasses, but as the light shifted, she realized they were empty crates, soaking, almost feeding the river. Her stomach twisted. From where she hid, she could see the faint glow of symbols drawn on the sand near the shore. Yoruba glyphs, old and crude, the kind her grandmother used to warn her about when she was small. "Never cross where the old traders mark the water," Grandma had said. "The river keeps account." Now those words rang in her ears. Suddenly, a voice echoed behind her. "You shouldn't be here." She spun around. It was the butcher, the first man she'd ever bought from at the market. His apron was gone. He wore a dark jacket, eyes calm as ever. "Why are you following us?" he asked. Sarah's throat tightened. "What is this? What are you doing here?" He smiled faintly. "You eat from the river, don't you? Everyone does. The city lives on what it gives." "I saw the crates," she said, shaking. "I saw the marks. That's not normal meat." His expression hardened. "Nothing in Lagos is normal, madam. Everything is paid for in sweat, in blood, or in silence." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You should have stayed a customer." Before she could move, headlights flared from behind her. A van pulled up, blocking the exit.
She turned and ran toward the water, but the river's surface rippled violently, waves slapping against the shore as if warning her back. She froze. Behind her, the butcher said softly, "The river remembers who it feeds." The words hung in the humid air. Sarah ran. She didn't stop until the city lights reappeared in the distance. That night, when she reached home, she found the freezer door wide open. Empty. No meat. No wrap. Just a faint wet mark on the bottom, shaped like a hand.
Sarah didn't go to work for days. She sat at home, curtains drawn, replaying the events in her head. The breathing river, the chanting workers, the butcher's words. Everything is paid for, in sweat, in blood, or in silence. Every sound in her apartment now seemed amplified. The hum of the fridge, the creak of the ceiling fan, the whisper of the evening wind slipping through the window. Each noise reminded her of the river. Finally, she made up her mind. If she stayed silent, the fear would never end. So she gathered everything, her photos, recordings, and the phone footage from her freezer. She even printed the old article about Prime Vale meats. Then she went to the local health inspector's office. The receptionist glanced at her with tired eyes. "Ma'am, please write your complaint." "I need to speak to the director. It's urgent." 2 hours later, she found herself in a small office, smelling of disinfectant and files. A man in a neatly pressed shirt leaned back in his chair as she explained everything: her purchases, the warehouse, the river, the strange crates. He didn't interrupt. He just stared. When she was done, he sighed. "Madame Sarah, do you have proof?" She handed him the pictures. He flipped through them quietly. Then he stood, walked to the window, and said, almost too softly, "You shouldn't have gone there." Sarah frowned. "Excuse me?" He turned back, eyes expressionless. "There are things you don't touch in this city. Leave it. Go home." "But," he raised a hand, "forget what you saw. That's my advice." She left his office shaking, a pit forming in her stomach. As she reached the gate, she noticed 2 men in black jackets standing outside. They didn't speak to her, but their eyes followed her every step. That night, she packed her things. If the system was part of it, there was nowhere safe in Lagos. The next morning, she moved to her cousin's house in Abeokuta. Quieter, smaller, away from the city noise. She tried to start over, but even there, in the calm of the new town, the past followed. One afternoon, as she walked to the market, she saw a familiar sight. A small meat stall, neat and spotless, with a clean white apron hanging from a hook. The sign read, "Prime Vale Fresh Cuts, new branch opening soon." Her legs went weak. She stared at the stall for a long time, unable to move. Then the butcher looked up. Different face, same calm smile. "Good morning, madam. Fresh beef today?" She didn't answer. She turned slowly and walked away. That evening, she poured all her savings into a small freezer business, buying directly from farmers she could visit herself. She told herself she was done with city meat. But sometimes, when she cut a piece of beef,
she'd see a faint line, like an old scar across the flesh. And every time she washed her hands after cooking, she swore she could smell the river again. In Lagos, nothing truly disappears. The blood remembers. The city feeds, and it never forgets.
Thanks for watching. What has this story taught you? Drop your comment below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories.